I'd just like to make just a short note that when we first met Tino in April this year, the progress that Fiji has made in relation to integrity is phenomenal. It's been so refreshing to work with a country that's really engaged on this topic. So thank you, Tino, for your support and also the work that you're devoting to this. So the Vice-Chancellor borrowed my quote this morning from Nelson Mandela, so he stole my thunder a little bit, but I think great minds think alike. But I think, this quote, the reason why it's used so much is because it summarises so perfectly the role that sport plays in communities. And every time I come to the Pacific, it's amazing how important sport is. Every time you go through a village, or you always see kids playing soccer, and it really is entwined through the village life and through the communities and really through the islands. And we see that particularly with rugby, and recently with Tonga with the rugby league when they beat the Kangaroos. So I think that's why integrity is so important, because it's such a fundamental part of life in the Pacific and also life in Australia, which is why the Australian government's taken integrity so important, put such a focus on it since 2010 when we started this work. I think the key with integrity is integrity sits behind each of these SDGs. Integrity is very hard to get, but once you lose integrity, everything's lost. Australia is going through a number of royal commissions at the moment, and really it comes down to where institutional child abuse of children, banking royal commission, aged care royal commissions, and in all the testimonies we hear, it's about people not doing the right thing. It's where integrity has been lost. And this way, integrity is so important. It's not visible at all times, but when you lose integrity, it's evident why things went wrong. And you go back, and it's because people did the wrong thing. And that's really all integrity is. So it sits behind all of these SDGs. Once again, just sort of reiterates why this is so important and such an important topic for everyone. Just a summary of why we find ourselves in the place where we are at the moment in relation to integrity problems and match fixing and organised crime. It's essentially because these three things have now come together. The sports betting markets have only really evolved over the past 10 to 15 years, and what's happened is with the internet now, you can bet on anything 24/7. I can bet on Icelandic football, 3rd division. I can bet on Georgian handball. I can bet on everything. And if you log on to a bookmaker, and we spend a lot of time watching bookmakers around the world, and there's literally hundreds of them. You can bet on everything every day. No matter where there's a competition going on, there will be betting on that. So what's happened is the betting on sport has exploded. The gambling and organised crime have always run together. If you look back at the history of organised crime, the Chinese triads, the Japanese Yakuza, the American organised crime groups like Cosa Nostra, the Italian organised crime groups, the Australian organised crime groups have always been involved in gambling. What's happened now is with the internet, they're now able to service a global audience. So you don't just, where previously you would just bet with the bookmaker in Fiji, now you can bet with the bookmaker in Curacao, which is just a Dutch territory off South America. You can bet with bookmakers in Russia, Vanuatu, Costa Rica, Montenegro. So there's bookmakers all over the world, and because they're online now, you can bet with them. And then sports was never really built for this. Sports was about running around the paddock, having fun, competing. But as more money's come into sport, people are gambling on sport, that incentive to cheat, corrupt, get players to do the wrong thing and profit from that is where this has all come together. So really these three factors have all come together, and the internet has really thrown fuel on the fire. Because now an organised crime group based in Italy can bet with a bookmaker in Russia on a game in Slovakia. And that's how complicated this world is. And we're really struggling to keep on top of this. We're working really hard, and it's an international work, but match-fixing investigations really are some of the most complex investigations you'll ever undertake, because the evidence doesn't exist. In some countries, we don't even have criminal offences for match-fixing. So we can't actually lock these people up. And high-level organised crime groups are involved in this. And what we're finding is that they're exploiting the weakest points in the system. So wherever there's a vulnerability, we start to see organised crime start to target, and we're talking about kids. We can bet on under 16 soccer games around the world at the moment. So what we're seeing is the betting market's getting lower and lower into youth leagues. I took this screenshot when the Pacific Games were on in Apia. I was lucky enough to be at the ministers' meeting in Apia, and I checked the bookmakers just when the Pacific Games started. Basketball's one of the most heavily traded sports in the world. Football's number 1, tennis number 2, basketball number 3. Basketball's one of the higher threat sports for us because of what we call spread markets. So a spread market is where you bet on a team A will win by 25 points or more than under or overs 25s and things like that. So what teams can do is they can still win the game, but they can also manipulate the spread. So instead of it being 20 points, they'll make it 15 points and then corrupt the betting markets like that. So they're paid to bring that spread in, as we call it. So it's called spread betting. So there's betting on your games. There's betting on games in the Pacific. There's betting on competitions in the Pacific. It's here and it's happening. So this is a bookmaker based in Curacao, which is that Dutch territory just off the South American coast. Problem with the bookmakers in Curacao and a number of other jurisdictions is that they don't have any integrity agreements with us. So if in Australia, if we see an event that's suspicious, we'll actually go to the bookmaker and we're able to get all the betting transaction data. We can see who bet on it, how much money they bet, so we can reconstruct what's actually happened. If we go to a bookmaker in Curacao, they'll never talk to us. We don't know who's bet on that game. So we don't know who's bet on these games in the Pacific. We don't know who's bet on these games, whether, and if we saw a strange result, we have nowhere to go because the bookmakers won't help us. So it just shows you that the problem is here, how big the problem is and how extensive the betting is on the Pacific events and competitions. We're still to understand that. This is one of the knowledge gaps. This is one of the things we don't quite understand. But we will be working on that next year. People, when they think about sports integrity issues, they think it's just about match fixing. There's an international convention that came into force on the 1st of September this year called the Macklin Convention, which is a Council of Europe convention Australia signed on 1 February this year. Essentially, the Macklin Convention is the only international convention that deals with competition manipulation, and they use the term competition manipulation. And the definition goes along the lines of it's any intentional act, arrangement or omission that alters the outcome or the course of an event or competition and results in an undue advantage. So these are just some examples. We're doing some work at the moment. There's a number of countries working together to actually determine what this definition means. And these are some of the things that we've been working on. What we call tanking, deliberate underperformance, where you go into a game and essentially just tank. Now, some players will tank for competition reasons. They know that they've got another big event they've got to go to, so they'll tank out of that event so they can go to another event where they've got a better chance. It may be to manipulate the draw, to say, okay, well, if we lose this game, we're going to be in a better team in the next round. And teams and athletes are starting to now be penalised for those actions. Abuse of power and governance structures to alter events' outcomes, where we have team owners and managers who will actually trade games in relegation leagues and promotions. So if one team's already through, another team is looking to be relegated in a relegation league, they may say to that team that's through, can you let us win this game? We'll give you some money if you let us just win this, and that will mean we don't get relegated. So this horse trading that goes on between managers and administrators happens a lot, particularly where we have relegation leagues. Alteration of sporting equipment and venues. Pitch manipulation. We had anyone who follows cricket would have seen the famous sandpaper gate now, where we had a well-known Australian cricketer orchestrate sandpapering the ball to make it swing in the air. So we actually alter the equipment to do things popular in F1, Formula One, where they'll alter aspects of their car that are outside the rules and things like that. Modification of identity, age and misclassification, particularly in parasports and things like that, where there's misclassification issues. And then misreporting of times, results, or manipulating qualification rounds and things like that. So sometimes it's related to betting, other times it's not. It's essentially up to the imagination of the people that are involved in these things as to what involves manipulation, but it's very clear under the Macklin Convention definition that all these things fall within the scope of the convention. So what we're talking about here is what we're trying to do is really to get people to start doing the right thing. It's starting to instill good ethics. And this isn't just about the athletes. This is about parents on the sideline. This is about what parents teach their kids. You know, do they teach their kids that it's okay to cheat here and there? It's okay to break the rules. It's okay to commit a foul. Or do they say, no, you do the right thing? You know, if you stick by the rules and you do the right thing. It's about teachers teaching kids these things too. Teaching them when they go on the field that they do the right thing. Coaches, medical staff, making sure they stay within the rules. Administrators, volunteers, officials. Essentially, this is anyone that touches sport. And then we've heard today, you know, sport isn't just about the people on the field, it's about this other world that exists around them. If everyone does the right thing, integrity is strong. But when people start to do the wrong thing, this is where integrity issues start to creep into sports. And then we get to the worst of it, where we have match fixing and manipulation, and you know, the worst cases of organised crime. But if people who do the right thing also need to call out the people who do the wrong thing as well. So if you see a teammate, or if they see a coach sees one of their kids who's starting to go down that path, it's about instilling good ethics. So just finally, integrity in sport impacts on all levels and every country in the Pacific. It may be there. You know, we do have a lot of issues in Australian sport at the moment, but also the more we look, the more we're finding. We started with a unit of 5. We're now doubling our unit to 10 people, just based on the workload that we have. And it's because we've started turning rocks over and we've started to see the problems that we have in Australian sport. And it's also related in Australia to the amount of money that's been made as well. You know, money's a big motivator for a lot of these things. As I mentioned before, organised crime can exploit vulnerabilities and undermine the values of sport. Strong integrity frameworks will build strong and resilient sports that are resistant to corruption. A lot of this is about getting on the front foot. It's about building good ethics in your kids, so when they come to represent Fiji or represent your country, they've got those good ethics and that good framework inside them. They know not to do the wrong thing. And I always ask this question: what would be the impact of corruption in sport in the Pacific? And I think we all know what the answer to that would be. You know, what it would do to a country to find out that one of their team members manipulated a contest or didn't do their best and was involved in corruption in sport. Without saying, I think we all know what the impact would be across the Pacific if that actually happened. Okay, thank you.